All right, so we'll call this meeting to order. And first item on the agenda after that is roll call.
Ben Bartow,
Present.
Wesley Chugilern,
Here.
Todd Shipley,
Here.
Ronald Ellis, Jennifer Thomas, Vida Ozude,
Present.
Nicole Lohr. Present. That's it.
So first up is item 201, which is discussion and possible action to select the audit committee chairperson for a one-year term ending July 30th, 2024, from the current members of the audit committee, which are Ben Bartow, Wesley Chugilern, Ron Ellis, Nicole Lohr, Vitalis Ozid, myself, and Jennifer Thomas. So this is possible action. So I am seeking a motion to nominate somebody for president for the year. And I'll seek a nomination if nobody else does for Ron Ellis. Ron's not here.
I second that one.
Well, Ron's
He's not
current chairperson, so everybody knows, and I would make a motion, if I can, from the floor, to nominate Ron if nobody else will, for another term.
Sorry, this is Sarah Montalvo. I don't think you guys have met me. I'm legal counsel. Has Ron stated that he would be interested? I just want to make sure we don't nominate him if he has not expressed interest in the role.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's okay with that. Okay, perfect.
And if he doesn't, I'll make it.
There we go.
Nah, just kidding. Do I have a second for the nomination?
Vito Zude, I second the motion.
All right, so a first and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, then motion carries. Motion carries. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So, cool. Ron's it. Good for him. Yay. Item 202 is discussion and possible action to select the audit committee vice chair for 1 year, term ending June 30th, 2024, from the current members of the audit committee, the same people I mentioned before. I'm currently the vice chair, and I can't nominate myself, so if somebody wants to nominate me, I would be willing to do another year.
Vito Zude, I nominate you for vice chair.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Nicole Lohr, second.
All right, thank you, Nicole. On that motion, do I have, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on. 203, approval of the minutes of the May 11th, 2023 Audit Committee meeting. And this is an action item, so we need to review it. Let's open this up for discussion. Do we have any comments on the previous minutes from the last meeting, or any discussion things on it? Hearing,
Kirk Starkey for the record. We had one change. It was noted by Mr. Ozudu on page 3 of the minutes. We're going to add towards the very bottom under item 203, where we put office, it's going to be officer. We'll make that change so when it goes to the board, it'll be proper. Thank you.
do we need to do anything to make it? So the motion needs to make that amendment, legal counsel?
Yes, so the motion could just be approved with the amendment suggested by
Okay.
Kirk.
So I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes with that amendment. If somebody would make that motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment stated.
Perfect. And second?
I will second.
All right. The motion is on the floor, and all those in favor say aye.
Just a second. I didn't see any public comment sent on any of the previous items, but let's just make sure on every action item, we make sure there's no possible public comment
On
No,
the
there's,
minutes?
on any action item on the agenda.
yeah, there's no public comment on anything so far.
So we have a motion to accept the minutes with the amendment, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries, the minutes are approved. Number 2.04, presentation of possible action to recommend the Washoe County School District Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023, to be forwarded to the Board of Directors for acceptance. So we have that, and we have people to talk about it.
Yes. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Mathers, Chief Financial Officer for Washoe County School District. It's nice to meet some of you for the first time today. We have some new members I see of the Audit Committee. I will tee it up here real quickly before I turn it over to our external auditors from Crow LLC. As you probably know, the annual comprehensive financial report, which consists of our financial statements, various opinions of our external auditor, a statistical section, many other sections, is required by state law. We are required to submit that to the Board of Trustees by October 31st or request an extension. We were grateful to be able to complete that with Crow's help by that deadline. And as you, I'm sure again, probably realize, this annual comprehensive financial report represents many months of very hard work by our accounting team. And so I know, again, some of you are new to the committee, but for those who are not, you'll remember last year it was me and Mindy Capron who presented on behalf of the district and answered questions. But this year I'm happy to report to you that we filled our controller spot. We were lucky enough to have a gentleman in the audience, Martin Williams, join us. He came from us from being the controller at the Incline Village General Improvement District. He also worked at Washoe County and the state of Nevada in various capacities. So very lucky to have him. He assisted greatly, led really the effort over the last several months to complete this document. So I wanted to acknowledge him and his role and the continued role of Mindy Capron, our assistant controller. So with that, I'm happy to be able to turn it over to Charles Rabley, Moran Murphy from Crow LLC, who will give the presentation, but just recognize we're also here if you have any follow-up questions that they can't answer because it's about particular district issues. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for your time this evening. As Mark mentioned, my name is Charles Ribley. I'm with Crow, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the required communications for the audit process and the results of the audit, and then address any questions that you might have. And then we can go to the next slide. So first we wanted to talk, oops, it's okay. We wanted to talk a little bit about responsibilities as it relates to the external audit. So these are sort of the required communications. Oh, yeah, it's okay. There we go. So as part of our responsibility as your external financial auditor, we have some communication responsibilities here. So our responsibility as part of your external audit is to express an opinion as to whether the financial statements that you produce are fairly stated in all material respects. Because in addition to that, you have expended more than $750,000 of federal grants and entitlements. So you have a requirement to have a federal compliance audit as well. So we're also giving an opinion over federal compliance. In that process, for both the federal audit and the financial statement audit, we consider what's called risks of material misstatement. So those areas of the financial statements or your operations that are more susceptible to something going wrong. And we incorporate those risks into any audit. In addition to that, we also have to evaluate internal controls that are relevant to financial reporting. So we have to understand what internal controls are in place at the district and whether they're whether they are operating effectively in that process. And so those come together to become what we call a risk-based audit approach. So we increase our auditing procedures over areas that have more risk involved or more susceptibility to input from either management or outside sources, not just hard numbers, but estimations, et cetera. We conduct our audit in three general phases. So the phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 in that May-June timeframe, where we start the internal control evaluation, we start procedures over federal compliance, and then moving into phase 2 is in the September kind of range of time. We start looking at the year-end numbers. So in this case, the year ended June 30, 2023. So looking at that fiscal year-end, the actual numbers that were issued as part of your financial statements, and then taking those and working with management to produce the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report that you have before you in the October timeframe, with a view to filing by that October 31 statutory deadline. So, go ahead. All right, so the next phase, so I mentioned about auditor's responsibility, so this is about management responsibilities. So ultimately, even though we are helping to produce parts of the ACFR and the documents therein, management is responsible for the financial statements, and auditors are independent of that process. In addition to that, because again you have those federal dollars, management is also responsible for federal compliance and any Nevada revised statute compliance requirements. And you're also required and responsible for having that internal control process and making sure that that's been established and maintained in place. Internal controls for financial reporting and internal controls over compliance. So important. I'm going to hand it over to Moran to talk a little bit about new accounting standards and their impact.
Okay, so for new accounting standards, every so often the GASB will put out a new standard to help with consistency in financial reporting among governmental entities. So the new one this year was GASB 96, which is related to subscription-based IT arrangements. So things like software licensing, any other technology agreements that the district may have. If they were considered material, then the district would have to add a right-to-use asset and a related liability on the financial statements. However, after the district compiled all of their agreements, they determined that they didn't have any multi-year agreements that were material, so they did not add this to the financial statements and they did not implement the standard. And as auditors, we agreed with their assessment.
And I'll only add one thing to that, is that depending on the types of government, some governments throughout the U.S. had a significant impact from that standard. We're seeing many school districts did not, just depending on the structure of their budget, how they decided to make purchases of software versus leasing software. So that would make an impact. Sorry, Moran.
That's okay. Okay, and then kind of moving into the results of the audit, there were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. So that is good news.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add there is if we had a corrected misstatement is if we had to make an audit adjustment in order to give our opinion. An uncorrected misstatement is if we had an audit difference, something we found the support to say something different from management, and it was large enough to where we need to communicate it, but not big enough to actually post an adjustment, that would be an uncorrected misstatement. Yeah. You can go to the next one. And the other required communications that we have to make to you all, if we have any difficulties encountered with management, if we had disagreements on how to account for something, if we became aware of consultations that they had with other firms or other accountants on how to report or account for something, then we would be making you all aware of that in a formal setting. Obviously, if there was an issue, we would be having that conversation before this meeting. So I'm happy to say there was no concerns there. And then there were no other issues that need to be brought to your attention, concerns. So I'm happy to say that was the result of that audit process. So the sort of the outcome and summarized on this slide is an unmodified opinion over the financial statements and an unmodified opinion over federal compliance. And unmodified is the highest level of assurance that you're looking to achieve out of an external audit for the financial statements or for compliance. So that's where you want to be. And so if we had any findings, they would be there would be another slide in this deck. So happy to say that we don't have any communications that we need to make to you all. On the next slide, we just have a couple highlights, and we'll be bringing this forward in our communications with the board as well, this presentation. Just some highlights as far as what are the numbers at very high level in the ACFR at June 30th. So the total assets being 1.9, almost just shy of 1.2 billion. And then the total net position, or if you're thinking about it in a for-profit lingo, the equity position of the district was a negative 145.2 million. And for context on that negative, we have two large liabilities that have to be recognized in the financial statements. Those are your proportionate share of the net pension liability run by Nevada PERS and the net OPEB liability, so those other benefits that you provide to employees of post-retirement. And so those are two estimated numbers that are actuarially driven. They fluctuate depending on several factors, and that is one of the largest reasons you have a negative net position, is those large estimated numbers. So the only other highlight I'll make on this slide is that there was two new debt issuances there on the bottom section. So there was a $40 million GO bond issuance that was previously authorized for school construction, and then $3.4 million of direct borrowings related to district vehicles, the purchase of those. So you can go to the next slide there. So as I mentioned before, no audit findings and no related recommendations that we need to make to you all. So I'm happy to say that it's a clean audit this year. I would echo Mr. Mather's comments about basically the efforts that everyone had to kind of pull everything together and provide us everything we needed for the audit. That's sometimes what makes the difference of being able to have that clean opinion, is getting the information on a timely basis and getting it to be right the first time. So if we can go to the next slide. This last slide I won't go into too much detail. If you have questions, we can jump back into this, but it relates to some of the context around why the net pension liability is what it is, and the net OPEB liability, and why it is what it is, and why it moves. So I'm happy to expand on anything in relation to that. But that's really just giving some background and context to those numbers and why they fluctuate. So in conclusion, on the last slide, we were able to say in our audit opinion that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. We had no audit adjustments and no findings as it related to the federal audit or the financial statement audit. And as I mentioned before, everything was provided correctly and timely for our purposes. So we really appreciate everyone's efforts to get us what we needed. I'm happy to take any questions. I know there's a lot on those slides. I tried to go through it fairly quickly, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to expand on anything.
Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay.
I got one.
I've got several. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, just jumping back to, I guess, the proportionate share of the net pension liability. Can you just elaborate on the I think, pretty big spike year over year, right, from 480 million to 929 million? Probably something to do with value of the assets, but it looks like it's been holding pretty steady at like 77% as a percentage of the total pension liability, and we're at 86% for 2023. So maybe just any elaboration on the actuarial assumptions or the reason for the increase?
Yeah, sure. Could we pull the slide back up, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Oh, sorry. We can hear it. Okay. So this slide here on net pension, this is a little bit of context here, but as you mentioned and acknowledged, that there are actuarial assumptions that go into this, and also the fluctuation can relate to the investments that are held by the plan, by the Nevada PERS plan, especially in this case. So you have a combination of factors that resulted in a spike. So in this case, the 2022-23 PERS numbers that you see are resulting from an actuarial study done by Nevada PERS that is in arrears. And as of the date of that date in arrears, the investments were on a decreased point, right? So the market had gone down significantly. So as a percentage of the total liability, they were a lower number, and that makes the net liability higher, okay? And there was some offsets in the gross pension liability related to service costs and interest, and that is because there is a liability out there, and over time that continues to grow because of the time value of money, and so that's taking into account that increase. So the combination of the increase of the total liability because there isn't, a full trust value to set aside to cover that whole value, that continues to grow. And then a decrease in the investments at that point in time. It doesn't reflect investment performance after that or before that. It's sort of just a snapshot. Right then at that date, June 30, in this case 2022, when they measured it, it was a decreased fair market value. So over time, I can't speak to the investment strategies of Nevada PERS, but we see that in other plans in other states that just fluctuated significantly downward on the investments in that measurement period.
Okay, so that's not anything different than you've seen, like that 10% change year over year?
Yeah, so we're kind of seeing a consistent trend in that way relative to other plans throughout the country that we are involved with and that have metrics against.
Cool. Thanks for the work on this, Crow, and all the other folks involved.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Because I've got a couple. Going back to the new standard, just so I'm clear, because I haven't read the new standard, so I don't know what it is. You're saying the school district is not paying any fees on IT software for more than a year at a time?
Well, what we're saying is that there may be some that are multi-year. They're not significant relative to the operations of the district. When you look at the size of Washoe County School District, and then you look at the size of any agreements that were multi-year, they either didn't apply to the standard, they didn't fall into that definition of qualifying for what they call a subscription-based IT arrangement, or they were just not material, so insignificant.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I'm not familiar with that new standard, so I just didn't know what it was. And the second was the $40 million from the GEO bonds. Is that WC1 money?
I can't recall off the top of my head.
No, Mark Mathers, for the record, those were our rollover bonds, which are pledged by property taxes.
Okay, where's that in the report, the notation of the 40 million?
So it's going to be in a couple of different places. There's in the governmental funds financial statements, you'll see it as a proceeds from issuance of debt, and I'm going to see how fast I can get my fingers to work here. Not fast enough, I can tell you. So if you're looking at page 86,
86, yep.
on the bottom 25%, there's a section with a subheader called Other Financing Sources and Uses. And the first line under that, bonds issued.
Okay, the 43 million.
Yeah, so that's the combination of the GO bonds and the medium-term bonds. And the other place that you'll see it is in the notes to the financial statements, where it shows that increase in debt, right? So I can point you to that page as well.
That's fine. I just want to know where it was.
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
What was materiality for this audit? Just out of curiosity.
That's one of those auditor secrets. I can't share materiality with management or with the audit committee or board. Yeah. You try to trip me up, man.
Good work.
So I have a question, and you may not be able to answer it, and I understand that financial statements are very high level, and my question is more lower level, digging in the weeds. I was looking for information as opposed to, and I think I'm finding it on page 87 for the general fund. It looks like I'm looking at information for how much we're paying our teachers as opposed to our administrative staff. And I'm thinking I would need to piece together the, essentially income statement from general fund, special fund, and governmental funds to get.
Yeah, so wages for employees are in these financials, and I'm sure Mark could speak and provide that information on a more granular level, but for the audited financial statements, they're broken out depending on the fund that the financials, like what those employees worked in, what function they were serving, and then beyond that, they don't break it out between those teachers versus administrative staff in the audited financial statements. So that's additional kind of supplementary information I'm sure that Mark could provide, or the finance team.
Okay.
And they're not required to be, I should just to be clear, they're not required to be presented separately, those. Does that answer your question? Or at least give you some
I mean,
direction?
sort of, I'm grappling with how I would put that information together myself to quantify it.
Okay.
And so I guess I'm thinking all the different funding, and I'm saying instructional and staff support. I'm asking, is that salaried positions for teachers as opposed to school administration, which I'm assuming is administration expenses for the administrational staff, so.
Yeah, let me, Mark Mathers again, let me try to, yes, you're on the right track. So we are required to budget and report on the functional categories that are listed in state law for school districts. And so you are correct, on page 87, under expenditures, you kind of see there the functional categories, again, that we're required by state law to report on and budget on. And so you're right, school administration is largely going to be principals, assistant principals, and so forth. General administration would be your indirect services, like the business office, human resources, and IT. I'm sorry, that would be central services, I'm sorry. General administration would be our superintendent's office. I do believe our school police is included in there, as well as general counsel. I would caution you, though, that those are not completely personnel costs, right? So that we have both personnel and non-personnel costs included in each category. In most cases, since personnel costs are more than 90% of our budget, I mean, you're pretty safe in assuming personnel costs, but for example, for central services or general admin, that would include major software costs. So you can't always assume 90% of its personnel. So when you see regular programs, those are regular instructional programs, and so forth. And so most of our expenses for operating costs and for personnel would be included either in the general fund or the special education fund, which is a major fund. And so you'd see the same breakout for the special education fund. Certainly there are other personnel expenses in our internal service fund, our enterprise fund, and certainly grant funds. But if you kind of want to get an overall picture easily of how much is spent in each category, the general fund and special education fund are where most of our teachers' salaries expenses are found. So with all those caveats, I mean, you're on the right track, but you won't precisely exactly be able to quantify that like you're asking.
Okay, that makes sense. And so student support expenses, I'm guessing expenses related to
Counselors,
counselors, okay,
yeah,
stuff.
and other expenses, yes.
Okay.
And
And
I could-
instructional staff would be instructional staff, teachers?
Instructional staff are mostly going to be in regular programs. They could be in other instructional programs, although this is a very minor amount. Some of them are in co-curricular and instructional staff support as well. So, you know, what I would offer you, if after you've gone through this and want to further break out, we can certainly provide that to you if you'd like it. But again, those are the major categories, and again, in most categories, 90% plus of the expenditure you see is salaries and benefits.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Just one question.
Yeah, Mark, so going back to her question, so the regular programs, most of the teacher salaries will be within that, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, again, there are other teacher salaries sprinkled throughout, again, student support or instructional staff support, et cetera. But, you know, by and large, yes, regular, vocational, co-curricular, again, some in instructional staff support. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And one more question. I'm sorry, Mark. Todd Shipley. On that same vein of Nicole's, I know you said the numbers there and the expenditures are the total amounts of wages and benefits. So insurance and PERS and everything is, okay. Do we break that out someplace else in the audit?
We do not on that kind of functional level.
Okay.
No, we do not.
And that makes sense. I worked at an accounting firm, so yeah.
Certainly, we very granularly budget and account for that, and within the accounting system. So it's not commingled. There are different object codes for each type of expense, but in terms of our reporting here, yeah, those are accumulated together.
Okay, anybody, questions online from anybody? All right.
I had one more too on the budget. Sorry. While we're talking about budgets, I think it's page 90 for you guys, although I'm 130 on my online version here. So there was a original budget of 33 million for federal grants, and it looks like it jumps to 106. And then it looks like mostly that came out of, I guess that didn't come to fruition, right? It appears. And then it looks like most of that came out of supplies. Can you remind me, was there something expected that didn't come in during the year? Or just comment on that number. Just looking at that big variance there.
Sure. I don't want to answer all the questions, so if Marty or Mindy would like to answer this, they could. But those are primarily our ESSER 2 and 3, the American Rescue Plan Act funding that was provided to school districts. Again, we kind of budget to the maximum grant amount and then just reflect what was actually spent. In terms of ESSER 3, we have until September 30th of 2024 to spend those dollars. So those are, again, going to be tutoring contracts, audio enhancement equipment purchases, smart board equipment purchases, as well as some certainly salaries and benefits of positions that we use that funding for. So I hope that answered your question real quickly, but I'm happy to try to drill down further if you'd like.
No, that's all the info I needed. Thanks.
Okay, is there any other questions? If not, all right, well, I'll take a motion to accept the report as is, to go to our recommendation to forward it to the full board.
Todd, call for.
Is there any public comments on this report?
There is no public comment.
There is no public comments. So back to my request for a motion for us to accept the report and forward it to the full board.
I would motion for us to accept the ACFR and forward it to the trustees.
All right, thank you, Nicole. Do I have a second?
Oh, can I just clarify, forward for acceptance?
Forward for acceptance.
Okay, thank you.
Vito Zudin, I second the motion.
Perfect. Thank you, Vito. We have the motion in a second, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion passes. All right, so now we are, yeah, thank you very much. So now we're at 2.05, presentation and possible action to recommend the Board of Trustees accepts the Internal Audit Department School Student Activity Fund Risk Assessment and Annual Plan for calendar year 2022-23.
I'm sorry, I
There's an error. So the notes are incorrect, but it's for year 2024. And we'll have possible action on that.
Thank you.
So we have that. And
Thank you, Chairman. Kirk Starkey for the record. This is an item for action, so please don't hesitate to ask it questions anytime. It's not a problem. Basically, annually, our office prepares and submits an annual audit plan to the committee for your consideration. The proposed audit plan is included as part of your packet and contains a schedule of audits planned for the upcoming calendar year. The summary sheet on the screen is probably the best reference point at this point. Essentially, the audit plan we've constructed in three parts: mandated audits, student activity fund audits, and other administrative projects. First, the mandated audits that you'll see, those include the annual charter school financial reviews that we are required to conduct annually. The other one we are required to do implementation status updates to the HR, sick leave bank audit, and the IT audit. We'll be doing those, hopefully getting those completed in May for the upcoming year. That's just basically checking the status of previously issued recommendations from past audits. Next, we have are the SAF, the Student Activity Fund audits. We have this office has the responsibility for performing periodic audits of district funds. And so this includes the student activity funds at the district schools. Just for some background and some context on these, the student activity funds are comprised of monies received at each individual school, basically through fees, fundraisers, donations, things like that. They're administered by the schools individually, basically in a trust capacity, and are intended for the benefit of the students. There's a significant amount of money transacted at these schools in this area, and just as an example, from last fiscal year, the ACFR reported approximately $11.7 million in receipts for student activity funds and about $10.8 million in disbursements going through those funds. During these audits, we're going to assess, typically we look at the internal controls around the funds and the procedures at each school for how they monitor and record and report the funds. In the last year or so, we've received several requests for audits in this area, and we try to be responsive to all the requests and put those on our audit plan. They're included here. The others that are on there we're proposing were arrived via a risk assessment process. The process is, I would probably say it's better described in the packet than what I'm going to say here shortly, so my apologies. But essentially, we took all the schools and evaluated them based upon a set of risk factors and assigned a point level to those risk factors. The risk factors we were using were, one of them is financial, which is basically the receipts at the individual schools, staffing, which is considering turnover at the significant points that deal with these funds, which is the principal or bookkeeper or secretary, depending on the size of the school. We look at the time frame since the last audit, we put that under audit reports. Audit issues, so here we're ranking, basically we track all the types of past issues we've had and whether they've been recurring or not. And then the last one is we consider fraud. This isn't exactly meaning that if we were to put a point base in that column for fraud, doesn't mean necessarily there was an item of fraud that occurred at that school. However, we were aware of a significant internal control breakdown that we know needs to, or are aware of that needs to be addressed. So that's why that factor would be increased. And basically we take those figures, quantify them, and compile them into one score. And basically the riskier, for lack of a better way of saying it, would be the ones we would want to focus our attention on in addition to the requested audits. And then finally on there, you're going to see administrative projects down there. Those are basically the hotline program, which is depending on what's going on, it can be a significant amount of time or just not so bad, but it's there because it consumes resources. And then we also, any management requested projects, we don't know what they are, we can't, but we know we'll need some time. Typically there are some during the year. So basically overall we tried to provide some significant audit coverage to these areas and based on our resources, and this is what we've crafted in order to also some of the mandated audits are to comply with the NRSs and the board policy. But we're asking the committee to accept the plan, and if you're good with the plan, then we'll forward it on to the board also for their approval as well. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Kurt. Questions?
Kirk, Mr. Zude, for the record, any of these audits and follow-ups, or the follow-ups you have in here, none of them is selected based on your risk. Is that accurate?
The follow-ups are not, because the follow-ups are just from past audit reports. So whatever we issued in the past and we had recommendations that are still outstanding and open, we still carry those forward on the follow-ups.
Yeah, sorry I said follow-ups.
Cool.
I meant, the audits in process.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so none of them, are they selected from your risk or not? And if they are, is there a way that you can indicate the ones that are
Gotcha.
mainly from risk-based, requested plus risk, so...
No, that's a good, I see your point. You got a good point. So in the audit plan summary, actually I can go down them. Incline I can go down, I think that'd probably be the easiest way I can do it. I see, I know what you're getting at. They're really labeled on, oh, actually, I think it's the next page, Jeannie.
Okay. It might be there,
Yeah, my fault.
maybe I'm missing it, but,
No, they're there. So the ones basically we have is the McQueen High School audit, basically a follow-up was a risk assessment.
okay.
We have, there's a couple of, I can't even see. North Valley's High School, Spanish Springs High School, those are risk assessment based, selected.
Okay.
Shaw Middle School is risk assessment based. And the last three listed down towards the bottom are Dodson Elementary, Smith Ridge, and Huntsberger Elementary. Those are the risk based. Right now, I don't have any hours going to those because it's the guesstimate on what we can get from most of the requested. If we can get through the requested faster than kind of what we're budgeting or guesstimating for, then we'll go right into the risk one.
The risk.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Kirk, what's the cadence for charter school audits? Like, how often do each of the charter schools go through an audit?
Good one, good question. We do them every year, and there's depending on, we've got 7 charters in the district. This year, we're looking at 6 of them. One of them got let's say, for lack of a better way, scored very well last year, so they don't need compliance work this year. So we'll just have 6. We kind of started around October, and it goes till December, basically. And a lot of the drag on the time frame is basically getting the audited financial statements. When they, just like you got here, they're basically issued around the same time frame. It's getting those finalized reports and getting through them. That's kind of the big time component, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yearly, pretty much yearly for all of them.
Every year,
then.
yeah, every year.
And
we'll
then
get
what was the quarterly monitoring one in that risk assessment document you just had up for
Got-
Bailey?
Yeah, that was one school. For the last couple of years, we've had Bailey on quarterly monitoring due to past financial non-compliance issues. So we were monitoring them that way on problems, let's say, yeah, basically issues we had during our reviews. Last year was much better. They had a changeover in their board, a changeover in basically the management of the school, and things went much better. So we basically took them off. We're hoping we'll take them off review next year. That's the plan. But we'll see.
Interesting. All right, thanks.
Yep.
I have a couple of comments if I can. So obviously I'm new here. When I found out that Mr. Stransky, I apologize,
all
only
right.
had 3 internal auditors, I was pretty baffled. I've been auditing for 18 years. I've done internal auditing myself. I've done external auditing. I just don't know, and I'm looking at your risk assessment and all of the different schools and their scores, and I count 24 schools with high scores contingent upon your risk assessment mathematics. I just don't know how you handle this amount of work with 3 auditors. And so it's not really a question per se, just an observation. I'm pretty baffled by how much work is here and how much to be audited also. I mean, we're talking about a school district, I think we saw in the financials almost $2 billion in assets. That's a lot.
Yes, I appreciate. We do what we can to be. The best way I could do it was break out it by position, by hours, and try and back into the number of projects we could get done. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it seems a pretty daunting task, and also knowing that there's annual audits for the charter schools. I mean, so you're looking at compliance audits and financial audits, and that's a lot of work. So, just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. They're out there in the audience. I'd like to thank them for all their efforts.
They do a good job. Okay, any other questions? Because I've got some.
Fire away.
All right. Comparing your project status from, is this all the audits from this year?
This is the next agenda item, though.
Oh, okay. Well, but still, comparing, is this all of them from this year?
From this year, it's other than the ones we completed. The ones I completed, I took off.
What I want to say on the 2024, there's so many more on here. And that's going back to Nicole's comment, is like, it looked like an increase.
You're right. You're exactly right. We tried to take all the requesteds, put them on the plan, and then show that we have a bunch of ones off the risk assessment that need to be addressed as well. We just don't have the horsepower or the
That was-
numbers to get to it.
That
Like
was where I was
Nicole
gonna go,
mentioned.
because it looked like you put a lot on here, but are you gonna be able to get to it all?
Not the ones with zeros under the expected hours,
Okay.
but
But even the other ones, you're not sure, it all depends on the required ones you gotta get done to
yeah,
get to these.
exactly, yes, sir.
All right, okay. That's all I got.
Thank you. All good.
So, if there's no more questions, we've got to send this to the full board, right? So I need a motion to accept the internal audit department audit plan, that we accept it and move it forward to the board for their approval. Correct? So I need a motion saying that from somebody.
I motion that we move the internal audit department plan to the board for approval. Thank you.
A second?
Vito Zuda, second the motion.
All right, so we have motion to accept the audit plan and move it forward for approval. All those in favor say aye. Public
Aye.
comments?
Aye.
There's no public
No
comment.
no public comments, but aye.
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 Any nays? All right, hearing none, the motion passes. All right. Next up. Where are we at? So we have 2.06, which is status update on the activities of the Washoe County School District Internal Audit Department to include current projects on the Internal Audit Department audit plan. And that's for discussion and information only, and that's the current year, correct?
Correct. Kirk Starkey for the record again. This item, like Todd said, is info and discussion, but don't hesitate to ask any questions. This is basically, this is an update of where we are now, what we've been doing since the last time we met. I know it kind of correlates with the last item we had, so I'll try not to be repetitive. But I wanted to show you right now at the very top, we're doing the charter schools right now, and we'll be doing those until about the end of December. The other ones that are in process, we've got Incline High School, Sparks High School, the McQueen High School follow-up has started. We were hoping to present tonight to you the Silver Lake Elementary School, but we just got the management responses, so we've got to compile those, and then we'll ship you out the final report there, and we'll have it at the next meeting as well. And we have Lemon Valley and Duncan Elementary Schools. They're all in various stages of process, but we're working on those. We're also lucky to we have BDO that's doing some capital projects, an audit on our capital improvement projects program. They're basically looking at just the professional services side of that program, which is the architects, engineers, any other consultants, design firms. They are moving along actually quite well. They're in the testing phase of sample testing several projects within the program. The plan, everything going well, would be we would bring that report to the committee at the next time we meet in February. So that would be good. That's where we anticipate getting that one. And the other administrative projects, like we always have, it's continual, is the hotline program and our P&P manual. I know, I apologize, this has been like a 2-year process, but we have a lot into it. We have 2 sets of professional standards, but we'll get it, I promise you. But we're trying to fit that in as we go through it. And at this point, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Any questions for Kirk?
So there's nothing going on special projects at this time, right? Because there's nothing noted here.
Right, there's nothing, right, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Nicole Lohr for the record. Who mans the hotline? Is it your department?
Yes, our department, I'm sorry.
So your department does everything.
Hey, there we go.
Okay.
No. So the hotline, just for clarification on that, people can submit, and it's employees or just people or general in the public. can contact the hotline through a phone number. We get walk-ins, people come in, we get deliveries from US Mail. Emails is kind of the big one, but those are any contact points, and then we kind of triage those complaints.
And that's the
as they
next
come in.
up. We'll talk about that, what they actually do, how they respond to it. Any other questions online? Ben, anybody?
Yeah, I have a question. Hey, Kirk, it's Wesley. There's two audits that are on hold. Just curious why in the performance audit section.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. What happened, we started those, it's been a while now, back around pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, we kind of put those on hold because of COVID, basically. But even when we were kind of getting back in the swing of things with the school activities, getting back in person, there was still a huge drain on staffing on certain departments like transportation, getting enough employees to do to be able to basically do their functions. So we were trying to stay out and away and take one thing off their plate, and that was the audits. We backed off on the audits and let them do their main functions. So these are here as kind of placeholders. Like, I haven't forgotten about them, but yeah, they're sitting there. They were probably there last year too.
Yeah. I remember seeing it for a while now, and I was just curious, since it's sitting here for stagnant for a while, and when you do your risk assessments, maybe it's probably not top of the risk anymore, and maybe we just remove it. I'm just curious.
No, it's a great question. I would say, just off the top of my head, that the transportation one probably wouldn't be the most riskiest one, but the other one below it, the psychological services, we're going to hang on to that one, and we will definitely re-engage with that one.
Got it. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You got it.
I
Thank you.
will say I appreciate you holding off on the transportation audit just because having a child in the school district, a lot of school was missed due to no transportation, and so to hammer them with an audit on top of that,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to devalue the importance of drug testing. I just think
No, I
that
hear you.
we're having a hard enough time busing our kids to school right now, and having actual school for all of kids contingent upon those bus kids getting there. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One question, Kirk.
Yeah.
Under the annual audits, I never remember the information technology, why we do that, but the sick leave, wasn't that one supposed to fall off at some point? Because they had caught up and we weren't going to do it?
The sick leave bank we finished that audit, and last year we started the follow-up, but the issue was to implement those recommendations. The department was in the middle of bargaining with the various bargaining units, and so because of the bargaining, we were kind of stuck, and their department was stuck, and so we just kind of.
But that one's going to go away eventually as an annual audit, though, right?
Yeah, that one,
Yep.
that annual audit's done. This is just a. I think I misplaced the word. The annual audit follow-up is. Yeah, it's
It was
just a follow-up.
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
yeah.
okay, that's all.
Thanks.
All right, anybody got anything else? Okay, thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
All right, now we're moving on to 2.07. Do I need to ask for public comments?
No, we're not action items. You're good.
Okay, we're good. Presentation 2.07, presentation of the Washoe County School District's report, fraud, waste, and abuse hotline concerns and outcomes since May 11th of 2023, and the meeting of the audit committee then. So this is information item only. Kurt?
Correct. Thank you. Members of the committee, Kirk Starkey for the record again. As Todd said, again, this one is informational only, but as our office administers this program, we call it the Waste, Fraud, and Abuse Hotline Program, and as part of your agenda packet is the worksheet that we show. It's basically the inventory of updates on cases that have been previously reported, that we didn't finish the last time we met, that are still outstanding, and all the new cases we've got since the last time we met in May. Let's see here, since our last meeting in May, we've had 15 new cases come our way. Of those cases, 5 we referred to appropriate responsible departments for their resolution, and those cases are considered closed. 5 others we closed due to, it was either 2 things: insufficient information to even do an investigation, and also they were outside the program's scope. 3 others we reviewed and we found that they did not have merit, and we closed them. One of the cases we had, we investigated and it was found to have merit, and it is being addressed and corrected by the appropriate department. And we have one that remains open that is still, we're working on with the department, so that one's open, and hopefully by the next time we meet, that one will be closed. We also, to note, one of the prior cases we had outstanding from the last time we met was found, we investigated, it did not have merit. We closed that as well. That's on the top section up there, the third from the bottom. But that leaves us, we still have 5 open cases from our previous cases that have been reported to us. And we'll continue to work on them, and we'll keep updating the committee on on the cases in this way. This is about, for Nicole, this is about as in depth as I can go with these due to the concerns involved, but I'll put as much as I can in the sheet.
Appreciate it, and I understand.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kurt. Just one question.
Yeah.
We see these every year, and just as curiosity, do we try to do any correlation of any of these things about a particular school, particular whatever, is there anything we've seen? Because I've seen these for years, and I've never heard you talk about that. We looked at the longer period, and we see a problem.
Great question. So I've been tracking it for 3 years to get an idea of where the cases are coming from and in certain areas. So I've only got a couple years of data there. The one thing we do though, like with the schools, if the matters involve something operational related to the school or related to finances, that goes into that risk assessment. It hits the scoring sheet there, so we have an area to look at also. Some of these cases do drive audits in a way, and that's like Wesley had mentioned under the section that we've had on hold. One of them is the psychological services. That one was driven from a previous case that came to us. And with that knowledge, that's why we put that one on the audit plan to address that one.
Okay, great. Not wanting to give you more work, but it'd be interesting, to see if we could find some correlation, particularly with schools or kinds of complaints and where they come from.
Okay.
I don't want you to do more work, but
no, that's
it's just interesting if we build up enough of a body of statistics to see some kind of pattern of, who knows?
Oh, good question. Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
That's all. Okay, any other comments for Kirk or questions? All right. That was 207. So 2.08, we have presentation of the audit committee calendar for information and discussion. So this is the standard calendar that Kirk puts out, and you want to comment on that, Kirk?
Sure. Again, it's Kirk Starkey. Oh, comment? Or no, sorry, my fault. Kirk Starkey for the record again. This one again is an informational only item, but it's kind of to give the committee a high level view of the planned upcoming meetings. The dates those are the best we can do at this point. If you have, you'll see for the first quarter in 2024 and November in 2024, we don't have exact dates, but those are the general planned months. And under each of the columns are kind of just planned items that are there, just for reference and kind of as a heads up. And it's there for your information. And if you have, you can use it. You can help us out. Like if let's say like the planned February 8th meeting, if you feel, hey, I can't make that, there's no way, I'm going to be out of town. If you could let us know for planning for quorum purposes for the meeting, that's huge. We'd appreciate it. But other than that, that'll do it. Thank you.
February 8th, I'm going to be out of town.
See, there we go. There's one.
Well, Mr. Starkey, I would ask maybe that, and gosh, I know this is hard because we have Thanksgiving coming up, but in November 2024 for the ACFR meeting, maybe push it out a week later, so we have a little more than a week.
You've got a great request there. There's a hiccup with it though. We're bound. The reports, like the one you have today, is issued October 31st. It has to be by then by state law. And so then what ends up happening is we meet on a Thursday, and then it has to go to the board. I think it's the next Tuesday. So there's such a tight turnaround. If we push it, we might be able to go like a week, depending on when we get the report. But it's kind of bound by that.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll just
I know, it's a rough
harder.
one like now.
Now that I understand why, at
Oh,
least
good.
I'm happier to oblige.
Well, thank you.
Okay, anybody online got any questions for Kurt on the calendar or anything? All right. We're-
Good job, Kirk. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
We're at the end here. We're at item 3, which is public comments again. Public,
There's no public comment.
thank you. All right. Hearing no public comments, we can move to 3.02, the announcement of the next meeting, which is the February meeting date.
Correct.
Correct? And unless anybody's got anything else, I'm ready to move for adjournment. We are adjourned.
Well done.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, well done, you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you.